Welcome back, and we're welcome back in. I guess I should say to the Marshall Experience. Appreciate you if you guys have been here the past few weeks. If this is your first time, welcome in. And our partnership here, Sports Lounge Media, we'd like to give them a special shout out. And if you're new here, the message has always been give us a follow, give them a follow. Those are important things on the side of the fence here, and it's completely free to you guys. The subscription and the follow, it's just a click of the button. So if you guys haven't done that on both sides of that, please do. Big things coming for both us and Sports Lounge Media in the next couple months. So stay tuned for that. If you've been following us the last few weeks, we have been doing the AFC conference side of things. We've done the AFC East, the AFC West, and the AFC North. Tonight we are going to be covering the AFC South, which is the Tennessee Titans, Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Indianapolis Colts. We can jump right into things here. For the Tennessee Titans, basically we're going to go down. We're going to cover each position, how they filter into where we rank them, if they're draftable, if they're not, what their expectations are. So if your favorite team is in the AFC South, stay tuned, and we'll definitely get that covered. For the Tennessee Titans, really, I don't think that there is necessarily anybody that is noticeable on the paper for the Tennessee Titans other than Carnell Tate. Okay, Carnell Tate was the first wide out drafted this year, going 4th overall to the Titans as a part of their really off-season overhaul on the offensive side of things, right? Then they led, we got Robert Saleh, new offensive play caller, Brian Dable, who brought Wan'Dale Robinson, Danielle Bellinger, and the center over from the New York Giants. Apart from Robinson, the competition for wide receiver snaps consists of a 31-year-old Calvin Ridley, coming off a broken fibula, I may add, and a pair of 2025 4th-round picks in Kimre DK and Alec Alamore. It may not be long before Tate really sees more targets than he ever did at Ohio State, where Marvin Harrison and Mecca Ibuka and then now Jeremiah Smith is really stealing the spotlight there. But a 5-star recruit in his own right. Tate put up 264 and a touchdown in 2023 as a true freshman. Led that up to 52, 733, and 4 touchdowns in 2024. And then last year, 51 catches, 872, and 9 in just 11 games. Pretty impressive there. He's often described as a high floor prospect rather than a high ceiling one, especially after the slight disappointment of the 40 time at 4.53 at the combine. But in my opinion, at his 6'2", 192 size, Tate is far more technician than physical specimen, winning with quickness, intelligence, crisp routes, and his strong hands. Okay, I do think that Carnell Tate is way draftable. I think he looks polished. He stands out in these offseason workouts. I think he's only going to make Cam Ward better, but I think Cam Ward has got to pick a guy, right? I think we saw Kimre and DK come on the scene a little bit last year. Alamore, however you say his name, I say what had a couple good games, questionable games. I think the big addition there, though, is definitely Wan'Dale Robinson. We can look at him for a minute. Actually finished as the wide receiver 14 last year, which is pretty promising. Had a couple great outings, had a couple top 6 outings, 3 of them to be exact. One against Dallas in week 2 where you put up 28 points. Week 12 at Detroit where he was ranked 2nd, putting up 30.6. And then week 17 was a top 6 finish with 22.3. So realistically, even in the Giants uniform, he really wasn't that bad. So be curious to see what he can do with the Tennessee Titans. Signed a 4-year, $70 million contract in March, reuniting with the former head coach, as we said, Brian Dable. Okay. 140 targets in big back-to-back years. Possibly died when the Titans drafted Carnell Tate 4th overall in April. But otherwise than that, again, Ridley, DK, and Alec Allamore competing for wide receiver snaps, potentially relegating Robinson to the slot specialist role that he filled much for his Giants tenure. So I just think that's going to be Ridley, Tate on the outside, and then you'll have Robinson in the slot where he necessarily is at his best. Now into the running back room, which is honestly maybe one of the crowdest. We'll look at Tony Pollard first, right? 23 last year, ranked 23. I think he's taken a real brutal workout in recent years. His carry counts in Tennessee might not look too substantial at a glance, but he was always supposed to be more of a big play specialist than a workhorse between the tackles. Because fellow Titans runner Tajay Spears has a concerning injury history and a plenty of pass-catching ability in his own right, Tennessee understandably spared Spears' rushing usage and more of a less paced the difference on Pollard, who otherwise would be capable of far more than the 33 receptions he recorded last season. Okay, now they also did pick up Nicholas Singleton in this year's draft out of Penn State. I think obviously he didn't get to really participate in any pre-draft testing with the broken foot. But I think, the assumption is that Singleton would have been among the most athletic running backs in the draft, probably only testing worse than possibly Jeremiah Love. Not even Love is necessarily a better pure athlete than Singleton, though. Singleton is a former five-star recruit and a track standout whose production at Penn State repeatedly tells the tale of a player too big and fast for the defense to contain. Despite falling to the 5th round in the 2026 draft, there's zero reason about the fact that Singleton was one of the most dangerous big play running backs of the past 4 years. Even with some of the ups and downs along the way, most recently and perhaps concernably losing work to Katron Allen, but obviously they both don't have to deal with that problem anymore. I think Tony Pollard is the clear starter in Tennessee, and Tajay Spears is the clear running back too. But Spears has one of the league's worst injury histories, and Pollard is not a classic workhorse either. Singleton only needs a bit role to get his foot in the door, and if he can earn the running back 3 distinction in Tennessee, he should be closer to the field than most running back 3 types. Okay, let's get into the quarterback here. Cam Ward, year 2, right? Last year, rookie year, finished as quarterback 22. I mean, was a week 1 starter, right? Well, week 1 starter for the Titans made him the top pick. Ward doesn't have much to show for his rookie year other than really experience. Okay, his on-target and completion percentage both ranked 31st in the league. And those came with rarely throwing the ball deep, as just 8.1% of his attempts traveled 20-plus yards downfield. The result was a league low at 5.9 yards per attempt and 15 touchdown passes in 17 games. Ward did not have much help, though. The Titan wide receivers dropped 24 passes, which was ranked 26th in the league, and the offensive line allowed a league-high 13 unblocked sacks as he was brought down a second most in the league 55 times. Okay? He also did not capitalize on the pressure with the scramble yards, less than 10 rushing yards per game, but instead fumbled 11 times, including a league-high 7 lost. Okay, not great coaching at that time. Brian Callahan didn't survive the midseason, adding to the instability in the offense, I imagine. Okay, now the Titans hired a defensive-minded coach in Robert Saleh with, the former Giants coach Brian Dable. Dable didn't impress in New York as a head coach, but his offensive scheme, I think, should at least be better than what Ward endured last year. The Titans signed, obviously, again, to give him help, Wan'Dale Robinson, Carnell Tate. Got a lot more than what he had last year. I think DK and Alamore can still step up. If you are in return yards, if your league gets return yards, punt return, kick return, anything of that nature, Kimre DK, I'm telling you now, is a sleeper. Big time returner last year, got most of his points from being in that realm. But fantastic guy. I mean, fantastic returner. I'm going to pull up his stats here in just 1 second. Returning week 1. Week 1 led off with 144 and got in at 12 yards in punt returns. Had 2 touchdowns on the entire year, but the yards is what did it. 162 in week 3. 141, 136 for weeks to follow. 175 was the high in week 8. I mean, just their defense wasn't good, so they kept getting kick returns, punt returns. You know what I mean? The special teams is very busy in the Titans world last year, and it definitely showed in that fact. For if you don't, and I'm not sure that he's draftable. Might have a few good weeks, but not draftable if you don't have return yards as your bonus. I guess some people say. Next team we'll get into here is Nico Collins. Okay, or next team. Sorry, next team is the Texans. Next player, I guess I should say, is Nico Collins. One of my favorite players last year. I had him sneakably maybe being the wide receiver 1 with Diggs gone, Tank Dell being hurt. I thought the target share was going to be immense. It was, but I think it was more on the side of Stroud fell off than Nico Collins. Nico Collins still did finish as the wide receiver 8, so he had a top 8 finish. He's working on a 3-year streak of 1,000 yards with 25 touchdowns in 42 regular season games over that stretch. Okay, now there is some lower body injuries that have been a recurring theme, but he did mostly avoid them last year. Instead, he suffered a pair of concussions, though. His per game production and per route numbers were strong, but not quite at the same level as in 23 and 24. When he averaged 17 plus in the points, PPR points, and 83 plus yards. Last year, Collins dropped to 15.1 PPR points, 10th among wide receivers, and then 74.5 receiving yards, which was 8th. Okay, that's more graded out as a low-end wide receiver 1 or a high-end wide receiver 2 for fantasy. His 2025 usage was nearly identical to 2023 and 2024, but at least on the surface. His per-target efficiency fell off, especially his catch rate, in part because many of his targets were simply uncatchable. Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud hasn't lived up to his promising 2023 rookie campaign, and the front office has botched that offensive line management instead of winning with an elite defense. The Texans did add David Montgomery and a lot of help on this offensive line with Braden Smith, Wyatt Teller this offseason. Also choosing to retain the offensive coordinator and exercise Stroud's 5th-year option. Doubts remain about the offense as a whole, but there is no doubt that Collins will get a huge share of the air yards and red zone targets whenever he's healthy. Depth chart wise, this has David Montgomery as the starter. Some say that Woody Marks, they felt that Woody Marks has earned it. I will tell you that Sleeper does say that David Montgomery is, in fact, the starter. So we'll cover David Montgomery first. Obviously, came over from Detroit. I think was overqualified as a running back, too, and understandably yearned for the feature back role he was accustomed to before the arrival of Jahmyr Gibbs. Though not particularly close to Gibbs' talent level, Montgomery is at least an average starting running back and one who's able to stay on the field for all downs and situations. New teammate Woody Marks is a candidate for passing down work, but that's mostly just because Montgomery needs to come off the field at some point. He's proven himself repeatedly as both a blocker and a pass catcher. In terms of the running ability, though, there's no comparison at all. Neither is likely to run away from defensive backs, but at least the 230-pound Montgomery can run people over and punish the defense with power running at volume. If C.J. Stroud were to recapture any of the form that he showed during his rookie year, I think that Montgomery would be set up well for both heavy volume and frequent scoring opportunities. If both Stroud and the Houston offensive line were to improve, Montgomery would step into a legitimate and top 8 situation. I think that, to me, David Montgomery, even when he was in Chicago, even when he was in Detroit, I think David Montgomery has always been a 3-down back. Now, I do think that David Montgomery is the better man when he has that supporting cast. But I also do think that supporting cast has always seemed to outplay him. Jahmyr Gibbs, DeAndre Swift. So are we going to see this in the Woody Marks situation? But I do think they're right. I do think that David Montgomery can be the 1-2 back, and then you got Woody Marks as the 3-down back in the pass catching opportunities. I think that Montgomery can really have a good season, guys. I mean, finished as a running back 27 last year, and that's as a running back too. I mean, we're realistically thinking about honestly a top 12 performance if done right by the Houston Texans. We'll talk about his counterpart, Woody Marks here. Fourth round pick for Marks. I think he took on an unexpected workload due to the ongoing absence of Joe Mixon, and in that role, Marks held up reasonably well. He did just miss week 16 with a light ankle sprain. If 2026 starter David Montgomery were to miss any time, then Marks obviously would presumably plug back into that role he had as a rookie. The rest of the depth chart at running back is sub NFL caliber, so it would definitely be his spot. Marks is below average as a pure runner, but by starter standards, but there might be some untapped upside as a pass catcher. Marks' receiving production was actually a slight disappointment in 2025 because in college he looked like the kind of running back who could be among the league leaders in that target rate at his career peak. Let's talk about another wide receiver here, Jaden Higgins. Okay, second-round pick last year, enjoyed a promising rookie season from a personal standpoint, scoring 6 touchdowns while seeing his role grow throughout the year. He's now positioned for the starting job opposite of, obviously, Nico Collins. But fantasy enthusiasm appears muted, in part due to concerns about quarterback C.J. Stroud and the offensive line, which is a very fair concern, considering. Okay, the good news, again, for Stroud and the Houston fans is that team made major investments in that offensive line this season. Again, Braden Smith, the right tackle, Wyatt Smith, a guard, and then they drafted Kenyon Rutledge in the first round. Again, OC is back for a second season. Perhaps not ideal for Higgins' fantasy prospects after last year's wide receiver room featured a deep rotation behind Collins. But in that fact, the Texans have since parted way with Christian Kirk, but they hope to get Tank Dell back in the mix and still have Xavier Hutchinson and Jalen Noel. None of those players should prevent Higgins from seizing the number 2 opportunity, theoretically. But there is a risk of getting stuck in the rotation again if he fails to assert himself in August and September. Dalton Schultz. Schultz set career highs with 82 catches and 106 targets in 2025. He was just 31 yards short of his career high 808 from 2021, which came back in his Dallas days. He's only scored 3 touchdowns last year, though he has been limited to 5 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons after racking up 18 across the preceding 3 campaigns. Nico Collins remains the alpha, obviously. Again, we just talked about Tank Dell and Jaden Higgins are both candidates to take on more targets. But Schultz should continue to serve as a dependable chain mover for C.J. Stroud. The Texans did draft tight end Marlon Klein in the, I believe, the 59th pick. But Klein had just 1 touchdown in 36 games at Michigan and is unlikely to challenge taking anything from Schultz. I don't feel like we need to cover Hutchinson or Noel. I mean, they're dynasty stashes at this point before we really start digging deep. So we'll just finish this off with C.J. Stroud. Quarterback 21 last year. Stroud hoped to bounce back last season, but instead it was a near repeat of his disappointing 2024. He was 2 yards shy of matching his passing yards per game at 217.2 and was 1 off the pace on touchdown passes with a career low 19. For the second year in a row, Stroud struggled throwing deep. He struggled just 31%, which was ranked 24th, of attempts of at least 20 yards and had almost as many interceptions, 4, as touchdowns, 5 on those passes. His 2-year trend on deep passing is actually stunning. Stroud had 30 completions on 51 deep attempts as a rookie. The last 2 years combined, he's had 31 completions on 100 attempts. So it's literally worse than half. Almost exactly that. In other words, the same number of deep completions on twice the number of attempts. It gets worse. As a rookie, he had an 8 touchdown to 0 interception on such attempts. The last 2 year combined, it's an 8 to 10 touchdown to interception ratio. Okay, now it's hard to blame Houston wide receivers who dropped just 3 of Stroud's deep passes and ranked 11th in downfield open rate at 9.7. Better health would help, though. Nico Collins has not played a full season in his 5-year career. Tank Dell obviously missed all last season. Perhaps Jaden Higgins or Jalen Noel could blossom in year 2. Obviously, the improved offensive line will help. And the Texans rebuild it further this offseason with the draft pick of Kellen Rutledge. Okay? Now, Stroud has a lot to prove this year. Texans picked up this 5th-year option to $25.9 million, but they may start making other plans if he can't stay locked in. So we'll stay tuned on that. But that pretty much wraps up the Texans there. Now we'll get into the Colts here with their leaders. Obviously, the top guy there in the Colts industry is Jonathan Taylor, right? I don't think that's even with Tyler Warren or anybody else out there that just got drafted. Jonathan Taylor's the guy. We'll talk about him first. Running back number 4 last year. Okay. Really, the arrival of Daniel Jones proved a godsend for Taylor, which with the improved quarterback play, such a contrast to what Anthony Richardson had provided that it looked like Taylor was playing on a lower difficulty level, in my opinion. Though Taylor has always been highly successful, the Colts, that was often the case in spite of the offense around him. If Taylor were ever truly empowered by a surrounding offense, he might enjoy the kind of glow-up that CMC or Saquon Barkley got after leaving their original NFL teams. Unfortunately for Taylor and the Colts, Jones was made less effective by a fibula fracture mid-season before suffering an Achilles tendon in December while playing through the first injury. His final numbers were 20 touchdowns, 18 rushing, and career highs in receiving stats. The season was still largely a tale of before and after Jones's injuries. Taylor averaged an ordinary 12.9 points per game after a Week 11 bye. losing more than half of his production compared to the league high 27.2 points per game through the first 10 games. On pace for a 1,900-yard rushing season at one point, Taylor instead finished with 1,585 on the ground. He still has the stuff to pull off a 2,000-yard campaign in the right circumstances, but he'll never catch as many passes as other top running backs, instead relying on rushing yardage and touchdowns for fantasy production. It'll be a lot easier for Taylor to live up to his first-round ADP if Jones comes back healthy and effective, though there's also reason to question Jones' pre-2025 record with the medical and otherwise. So, next guy I'd say we get into here is Tyler Warren, who also finished as the number 4, but in his own position as tight ends. Warren was one of 3 rookie tight ends who ranked in the top 10 at this position in receiving yards last season, joining Harold Fanning and Colston Loveland. Selected by the Colts in the first round, he paced the productive rookie trio with 76 catches and 817 in receiving yards, while his 112 targets were the third most among all NFL tight ends. He caught only 4 touchdown passes, but added a rushing score on one of his 6 carries, showing some of his versatility that earned him Heisman-type hype at the Penn State. Warren's production sank down the stretch last year along with the rest of the Colts offense after Jones went out. He only had 26 catches for 200 yards during the season-ending 7-game losing streak. After averaging 61.7 receiving yards in his first 10 NFL games, Warren averaged a mere 28.6 yards over his last 7 appearances. He should nonetheless continue to see plenty of targets, especially with Michael Pittman and now in Pittsburgh, who had 111 targets in 2025. But Warren may have to rely on quantity to mask a lack of quality with quarterback Daniel Jones coming back from that Achilles tear. Now, with Michael Pittman now in Pittsburgh, I think there's a wide receiver 1 battle. Is it Alec Pierce? Is it Josh Downs? I think that Josh Downs is one of those underrated guys, so we'll get into him real quick. Did finish as a wide receiver 44 last year. Finished last year with career lows and categories, often becoming an afterthought in an offense that obviously had Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman, and Alec Pierce. With Pittman traded away in March and no comparable replacement obtained, Colts Shane Steichen mentioned in April that he wants Downs to take more perimeter snaps during the offseason program. Okay, Pittman's departure thus gives Downs a chance to increase both his route share and his per route target rate. Daniel Jones is coming back, obviously, from the Achilles, adding risk to the offense as a whole. But Downs is squarely back on the breakout radar as he enters the final year of a rookie contract. Okay, he's on a contract year. He's got to earn that. Whether it's with the Colts or whether it's with another team, he's got to earn that. Okay, the other competition is obviously Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce will end up getting it. Obviously, they paid him. They thought highly enough of Pierce to give him that 6th largest contract guarantee at $60 million among wide receivers, even though they knew he might need ankle surgery not long after signing. Okay, he ended up having the procedure in late March or early April, 5.5 months before week 1 of 2026, and reportedly has a recovery timeline of 4 to 6 months, which means that week 1 is not a sure thing. Okay, 2nd round pick in 2022. He served as a low volume field stretcher for 3 years. 30 deep targets was tied for 2nd most in the league, though, so he was definitely their deep threat. Okay, he then drew 28 deep targets in 2025, again ranking 2nd, but this time he was also a threat in the intermediate range, drawing 55 targets that traveled less than 20 yards downfield. With 4 touchdowns and 218 yards over the final 2 weeks of the last season, Pierce snuck over 1,000 yards despite missing 2.5 games in the concussion protocol. The Colts seem to think there's more meat on the bone, having yet to replace Michael Pittman, who was traded to Pittsburgh. I don't think they need it. I think that they believe in Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. I think that if they believe Daniel Jones can come back healthy, lead this offense, and it's clear as day, Daniel Jones may not be the best option for the Colts, but he's the best option in their room, and he makes everybody around him better when he does. So we'll talk about that guy, Daniel Jones. Okay. His first season in Indianapolis last year, Jones was on pace for a 4,000 passing yards and 25 touchdowns before his Achilles took him down in week 14. By fantasy points per game, he ranked quarterback 13. Okay, bolstered by, strong efficiency, and a few quarterbacks need touchdowns early in the season. But Jones was 5th in the league in both on-target and completion percentage, giving him the 4th highest yards per attempt at 8.1. He went downfield at a decent rate too, with his 8.2 yard average target depth and his percentage of 10-plus yard attempts, both ranking 14. Okay, he didn't run as much as he did in his New York days, though he had a career-high 5 rushing touchdowns. Okay, that could be scaled back even more this season because of the injury. Jones does hope to return week 1, but Achilles injuries can impact performance long after a player gains medical clearance. But the Colts, although were confident enough to give him a 2-year, $88 million contract this offseason. So, the faith is there. Does all the pieces come together? It could, but I think that Daniel Jones definitely needs to be on the field for that to happen. Healthy. Some new faces in Jacksonville in the running back department. We got Trevor Etienne, who went to the Saints. We'll talk about in the next coming weeks. But we got Chris Rodriguez, who came over from the Redskins, or the Commanders, sorry. And Bashul Tutin, year 2, will get the look. We'll talk about him for a minute. Okay, 4.32 speed with a smallish frame at 5'9", 206. It was assumed that Tutin would function as something like a big play specialist, as a just a 4th round pick out of Virginia Tech. Okay, the Jaguars instead used Tutin more like a short yardage specialist, all things, leading to 7 touchdowns on 93 touches. Travis Etienne was the clear starter and the feature back for most and all situations. But his workout load and power limitations, it's easing the burden off somebody else now. It's Trevor Etienne, or Travis Etienne's gone. Okay, Tutin worked surprisingly well when taking over for Etienne in his games last year. Fumbles and drops were major issues for Tutin in college. And there's still huge uncertainty surrounding his NFL projection after a rookie season with 2 fumbles and only 14 targets. If he can cut back on the mistakes, Tutin has a huge opportunity in front of him to seize the lead role in a productive offense. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about it, but Trevor Lawrence had one of his best seasons last year. Speaking of one of the biggest fantasy busts of 2025, Brian Thomas Jr., which was ranked 42. Okay. Totaling 707 and 2 touchdowns across 14 regular season games after exploding for 675 and 5 touchdowns over the final 7 games of his rookie campaign. So, I mean, he really cooled off after his rookie campaign there. Let's see here. In 2025, Jacksonville's offense took a huge step. New coach Liam Cohen, and yet the 2 Jaguars who had the most preseason hype, which was Thomas and Travis Hunter, really both proved to be the huge disappointments. Part of the team's in-season improvement on offense entitled a reduced emphasis on Thomas/Hunter and more on the plates of Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers. Okay, from a non-fantasy standpoint, Thomas at least looked better late in the season after reportedly drawing attention throughout September, October for his dropped passes. Okay, Washington dominated Trevor Lawrence's attention down the stretch, but Thomas at least found a way to contribute with big plays in lower volume role. Well, arguably still the upside play for fantasy among Jacksonville wideouts, Thomas is often picked a round or so after Washington in this year's drafts. Okay. I do have high hopes for Brian Robinson. I think he had an off year. That sophomore year sometimes is tough. You have a great rookie season, you're on the high, and you get woke up sometimes. So I think I have a promise for Brian Thomas, a promising comeback story, but it's going to be tough, especially with Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington, who I think are going to eat into a lot of it. I mean, he finished as the wide receiver 42. They finished as Myers, the wide receiver 32, and Washington 27. So I mean, they're producing more. It's not like they just are favored. They are producing more. They're producing more yardage, more points, and I'd almost draft Parker Washington over Brian Thomas. I don't think that's out of this world. Travis Hunter, I'm not sure, sir, is still draftable at that dual position. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but they've said it kind of both ways that they're going to pull him more to the defensive side of things, and that kind of scares me for the fantasy world. Let's talk about Trevor Lawrence here for a second. Okay, Lawrence stayed healthy all last season, capitalized on his new coach's Liam Cohen's system, and used his legs to post the most productive season of his 5-year career. Quarterback 4. Very impressive. Most of his passing stats were similar to those of his last healthy season in 2023. Only this time, he had 29 touchdown patches, 8 more, and 9 rushing scores, which was 5 more, both career highs. Those scores aren't necessarily destined for major regression either. Okay, Lawrence's red zone touchdown pass rate bounced back to nearly league average in 2025. And 5 of his rushing scores last season came on designed runs inside the 10-yard line. Lawrence also threw downfield more often than it was expected in Cohen's screen-heavy offense. 37% of his attempts traveling at least 10 yards. The 4th highest rate in the league. Lawrence threw 15 touchdowns on those passes, and it would have become, if not for league high marks in both total drops at 36 and drop on passes thrown 10-plus yards downfield at 18. Okay, the Jags didn't really address their wide receivers this offseason because they didn't need to. I mean, seemingly counting on internal improvement from Brian Thomas, Parker Washington, Jacoby Travis Hunter is expected to play more defense. That's 3 great wide receivers right there. They've proven to be fantasy relevant even on that. I think the running back room got definitely worse. So maybe they go into a pass-first offense would be better for all 3 of these wide receivers and Trevor Lawrence. Speaking of pass-first offense, Brenton Strange finished as a 23 last year, ranked 23. Strange, unsurprisingly, though, set career highs in all major elite receiving categories in 2025, despite missing 5 games with a hip injury. He was backing up Evan Ingram for 2 years, and finally got that opportunity when he went to Denver, and he caught 46 of 60 targets for 540 and 3 touchdowns, maintaining a consistent role as a complimentary target for Trevor Lawrence with at least 3 catches in all but 2 games. The downside is that Strange had only 1 game and more than 61 yards and none with more than 7 targets failing to match the weekly upside of those wide receivers. At least two of those three wide receivers will likely continue to outperform the tight end. Travis Hunter, I see going to the defensive side, so I don't think he's going to get hurt as much. Okay. Lawrence does like to throw the ball to his tight end. Ingram led the position with 143 targets in 2023, but Strange is valued for versatility rather than pure receiving skills, making him unlikely to take on a major target volume like that unless the wide receiver room is decimated by injury. They didn't really draft. They drafted one in the second and the fifth round, but both figure to start off in specialized roles. Brenton Strange is definitely the starter who signed a three-year contract extension in this offseason. Okay. Now, we'll get into what we always do here, our bold takes. Honestly, I couldn't find 8. So we're only going to have a few here. I really don't think this is going to be a highlighted division. This is not going to be something that is going to produce a lot of top fantasy guys. I just don't. However, I will say this. Jonathan Taylor will lead the AFC South in rushing touchdowns. That's 1. 2, I do think Cam Ward has a possibility. If he tries to tap into that rushing upside of his, I do think that he has an opportunity to finish as a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, Tyler Warren will finish as a top 8 fantasy tight end. I don't think that's necessarily like out of this world bold, but some very good young tight ends out there. Okay, number 4, David Montgomery scores 13 plus total touchdowns in his first year as starter in a while. Okay, he's going to show that he has that ability to carry the team and be a 3-down back. Now, number 5, Bashul Tutin rushes for over 1,000 yards as Jacksonville's lead back. I mean, with Liam Cohen, the way he draws up this offense, think about Bucky Irvin, Rashad White. I mean, these guys had great seasons with Liam Cohen. There's no reason Bashul Tutin couldn't either. And last, Josh Downs will finish in the top 20 in PPR wide receivers. Okay, a couple of my favorite sleepers here for this AFC South. Cam Ward. Okay, Cam Ward, if you can grab him as a late round with the additions that have been surrounded by him, I really do think that he could have a decent year. Good value at the late rounds. Tyler Warren, with Daniel Jones back, I really do think that he could come alive this year. Jaden Higgins, I think with the volume share increase this year, got to watch out for Tank Dell, though. Tank Dell could, depending on how he comes back and in what frame, I would be concerned there. But Brenton Strange would be another one in the tight end department. And then one more in the wide receiver department, Wan'Dale Robinson. Excuse me. I think that, Cam Ward, I think he's going to like Carnell Tate a lot. But Robinson has some experience, and he's had some great seasons, low-key, in the Giants realm. Cam Ward could sneakily lead on this guy in the slot, and it could work out. Bust candidates, though, I'm going to go ahead and say Tank Dell, man. I'm going to go ahead and give it a year before I put any stock in a Tank Dell. I got to see what it looks like before I start buying stock on it. I would say Daniel Jones is a bust candidate in one quarterback leagues. I'm drafting Daniel Jones in Superflex leagues. If you run a Superflex league, I'm drafting him. But if you're only drafting one quarterback, I'm not doing it on Daniel Jones. Tony Pollard is a bust candidate for me. Not only Tajay Spears now, but it was if Spears goes down, well, his workload goes up. Well, now if Spears goes down, Nicholas Singleton's right there. If Pollard goes down, Nicholas Singleton's right there. I mean, he has too many variables and too many threats surrounding him there. Now, Podcast question of the night here. Which AFC South player is the biggest value in fantasy drafts? Now, I came up with 4 players here, value-wise, because these are different positions. David Montgomery for the Texans. Bashul Tutin for the Jags. Josh Downs for the Colts. Or Cam Ward for the Titans. And you guys can leave your comments down in the chat. Kind of just a podcast question of the night. Again, which AFC South player is the biggest value in fantasy drafts? That is David Montgomery, Bashul Tutin, Josh Downs, or Cam Ward. Now, for me, I'll go ahead and answer this question. I do think that it's David Montgomery. Okay, and this is why. David Montgomery, for me, has been undervalued talent-wise, and it's always because the better talent's around. Even in Chicago. I mean, he was doing great in Chicago. DeAndre Swift entered the scene. Went to Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs is here. You know what I mean? So he's never had that. I mean, he did in Chicago, but I'm just saying, and it's been a while since he's had that ability to show that he can be this guy. You know what I mean? He can put the load on his back and be that 3-down back. And I think that David Montgomery definitely has that chance this year, has that opportunity to really take the weight off of C.J. Stroud. Improved offensive line. Is it the best offensive line that he's used to, or maybe in Chicago's? I wouldn't go that far. But, it definitely improved from what it was last season. Good wide receiver room, in my opinion. We'll see what the quarterback play does, but I think that David Montgomery is definitely one of those draftable players and definite sleepers for us. Guys, we appreciate it. That's going to be it for us today on the AFC South. Next week, we are jumping ship, and we are going to the other conference. We're going to go into the national, the NFC side of things. And I think first we're going to start with probably the NFC North. Okay, NFC North. The top teams, top of America: Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, Packers, and the Bears. Or well, I already said the Bears: Bears, Packers, Lions, and Vikings. Sorry. So we'll cover them next week. So tune in next week. If your team is in the NFC North, or if you guys have any players on your dynasty team that these teams consist of. Guys, we appreciate it. Again, go give Sports Lounge Media and us at the Marshall Experience. Follow us on YouTube, TikTok, any platform you guys may find us on. It would be deeply appreciated. You guys have a wonderful week, and we will see you guys next Wednesday. Thank you.